Today's episode of the news is a little bit different. I've got all the usual updates, but here's what makes this special. A visual development studio just kind of blew the lid off what Blizzard were at least one point planning for the War Within. So much so that, well, the title of this video is what it is. So obviously, that's got to be the first thing we talk about today. I've also got a truly novel experience to share. Boot.dev, they've sponsored today's video, and I wish they were there when I was in uni, man, because there, right at Boot, you'll learn the coding, engineering, and career skills that you need to break into back-end web development, but with the best of twists, because their founder is a massive gamer, and that's why Boot is different. It's an RPG. It's got quests, levels, XP, boss battles, real-time leaderboards, and an active Discord community, which is basically like you're learning to program MMO guild. It's very cool. And it's got soul, it's got sauce, just looking at the UI, the vibes, the way things are architected. And that actually matters when you're learning a new skill. You don't want it to be boring and dry and lifeless. That'll actually make you hate programming, and Boot is the opposite of that. Now, you'll learn Python and Go across a wealth of content covering the fundamentals right through to the deeper learning topics like, say, algorithms. You'll build real projects for your portfolio. You'll do fun things like, say, asteroids in Pygame, such that you can actually start to cook and make your own custom version of asteroids with your own game rules and stuff. And you'll avoid two massive problems. One is tutorial hell, where you bounce from place to place without a cohesive learning path. And two is those get-rich-quick style code bootcamp hell things that are unrealistic and leave you not actually knowing everything you need to know. Boot is realistic, it has got the sauce, and it's just plain better than the rest, and it's tailored to people like us. You'll get 25% off your first purchase at boot.dev/Bellular, and it's zero risk. You can browse all of their content, you can do their demos, view their materials, and all that for free, and when you do buy, it's a 30-day money-back guarantee. Azeroth's true form then. Okay, here's the deal. West Studio did some early pre-production concept work for The War Within, and through this huge dump of images, we can basically figure out what Blizzard had planned, and of course, because of that, maybe even what they've got in store for a whole bunch of the World Soul saga. And I'll just start with the big thing. Literally, this is Azeroth's body, allegedly. So in this concept, it wasn't just her soul that's under Khaz-Algar. She's just there, right? Basically a full gigantic body sleeping within the planet. And for scale, just look at this airship. It is barely the size of her fingernail. Quite something, and this may perhaps have been a little bit too horror-coded for WoW, but I think the idea is fascinating, and we at least know that whenever Azeroth wakes up, she will turn into a, Titan of some sort. I mean, that's what we presume. If you are a little bit confused because you've maybe seen Titans in the Legion expansion and you think, well, they're big, but they're not really that big, that's kind of like their weird diminished souls. So canonically, Titans are like actually planet scale. There's the lore of Aman'Thul ripping Yasharaj out of the earth, and it's pretty much a big hand descends from space and plucks it out. So they really are humongous. This is a concept that was exploring that. And for all we know, this may actually be somewhere that Blizzard decides to go. After all, the final expansion in this trio is called The Last Titan. Back to the images though. This shot of her hand floating in the water I think is especially haunting. It is some really good work. And if this is the concept work that's being done, I think it's obvious that Blizzard are planning to show us, well, who we've been defending this whole time. And notably, when you look at Azeroth, she looks a little bit human. No textured skin or crazy features like we've seen with every Titan, which actually does make a great deal of sense. She isn't a Titan, she's a World Soul, she's Azeroth, basically where the lore has been heading, and something we've suspected for a long time is a World Soul is, to put it very simply, a little bit like Eevee, in Pokemon. It'll wake up and evolve into a form of thing, and if the Titans were to get there, as they had, and do all of their Titan business, then it would wake up as one of them, and therefore it would look like a Titan. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, I do imagine that this very human look is likely just for concept art's sake, right? This is the kind of thing where teams just explore ideas, right? They try to get them down so they can actually see how they feel about them. I'd very much imagine that if something like this was to make it to final, that her design would at least, pay respect to all of her children, not just the humans. Anyway, this is not the only thing that we've seen, because moving on, well, we found another body. This one looks to be a city built inside the corpse of Cthulhu, which is awesome. And if the Maddening Deeps didn't seem old god-y enough for you, well, I think some of these concepts really do the job. They are littered with dead old gods. Think about this line, right? This is a line from the Song of Renalash, which we discover in Hallowfall. Here's the quote: "The remains of gods scattered across the battlefield." Well, this kind of looks like that battlefield, doesn't it? And if you didn't think that this was a battlefield, take a look at this giant sword. So it does seem like it is one. Though, after the battle, not all of them may have been dead. We've talked about similarities between Bellular and the Dinars ships, which, of course, carried Naru within them. But the thing with Naru is that Light and Void are basically sides of the same coin. They do have their dark mode, and I have a feeling that evil trapped in a crystal was absolutely something said in the meeting room somewhere, because just take a look at this image. God, it's gorgeous. We've got some horrid Black Empire-looking creature trapped inside a giant crystal, and it really is quite cool. In fact, a lot of what seems to be Hallowfall maybe would have looked different here. These concepts show a much, much bigger and more advanced city under a crystal sky. So the original plan was perhaps to have Mereldar be a full Arathi city, not just the remnants of an expedition. And if memory serves, the Arathi actually arriving there fairly recently, I think that is not how Blizzard initially presented the zone to us. So I actually believe that at one point, it was supposed to be a little different. Anyway, and speaking of expeditions, right now we've pretty much lost all hope that we'll be going to the Root Lands in any major way in this expansion. People basically believe it's going to be Koresh as patch 11.2. Of course, that's a bit weird because Orwena and the Haranir are characters here, but it seems they're maybe being a bit sidelined in favor of the Ethereals. That, I think, does make sense for the overall World Soul saga, and at least how Blizzard get us to midnight. But anyway, we do see some concepts here that appear to be a planned portal to the Rootlands. But there's also an image of what looks like planets being ripped apart. There's a ton of concepts here overall. Some of them almost feel a bit more Destiny than they do World of Warcraft at times, but I think one thing is very clear. The concepts Blizzard wanted to explore with these are bloody big. They're dark, corpses, horrific caverns, fantastical, unnatural geometry, lots of crazy stuff, crazy shapes, Escher stairways, sharp, square buildings contrasted against flowing water and twisted corpses. It's all very cool. So if this is a bit of a glimpse of where World Soul Saga is going, yeah, I'm pretty excited because this art is sick, and as the likes of Hallowfall show, Blizzard can really pull shit off. Let's go back down to ground level. So, official patch notes for 11.1.5 are out, and there are no major surprises except for a few minor UI bug fixes. There's actually no word on Dinars in them, but we kind of knew that would happen. So, in case you missed the news, here's essentially what happened. There is news, and the news is that we'll get news later. Blizzard basically said that whenever the patch comes out, they will have something to say, which at least means that Blizzard haven't just been hoping that we would forget. Though if they're not in the patch notes of the game files, it does leave a possibility that they might be in the 0.7 patch that we would expect in June, or perhaps worse yet, planned for patch 11.2. But to be a little bit glass half full, if they are coming in 11.2, I imagine that's because Blizzard, well, put a bit of effort in, right? And they try to design something more proper for Season 3. Our next story sparked a bit of panic. So, quick PSA, because people have been confused in this one. Blizzard recently updated the terms of service on Gold, and they wanted to make one thing very clear. Gold swaps are no longer allowed. That means no trading gold between Classic or Modern, and no trading gold across Classic realms or factions. Now, this does seem kind of odd at first glance, but what this purely is Blizzard cracking down on real money trading in Classic, which probably won't help that much because, let's be real, it's completely rampant. Essentially what had been happening, right, is that mule accounts were getting hit all the time, but people basically knew to add an extra trade or two in the chain, which would kind of, wash the transaction history a little bit, and that would let them get away with things. So it could just be the case that this is Blizzard updating their policy so that they can more directly target that kind of thing. Because with this rule set in stone, Blizzard can take far more drastic action. And honestly, this is completely necessary. RMT and botting have been a fucking plague in Classic since its launch. It's resulted in some particularly insane nonsense like the GDKP raids. Some people loved that, but it ended up having a lot of negative externalities. People were incentivized to engage in RMT like crazy because they could just go and buy loot with gold, which you can do in modern World of Warcraft because the loot rules are honestly kind of broken. we'll have an investigation into that soon. Anyway, if you're trading gold across realms in Modern, don't worry, you're good, that's completely fine, and with the Warband Bank, that's a feature that Blizzard have fully supported in the game, so don't worry and help yourself. Do you remember when Battle.net used to just be WoW, Diablo 3, and kind of not much else? Well, it's a little bit different now because of the 31 games on Battle.net, 12 of them are not Blizzard games. And that number is going up and up and up and up. And with the most recent additions, we are really starting to look at a Battle.net that's becoming more of an unofficial Xbox app. Because if you go there now, you'll find Sea of Thieves, Doom, the new Doom game, Outer Worlds 2, and even Tony Hawk 3 and 4. And the way this will work is that once those are out, if you've got Game Pass for PC, you can play them on Battle.net. That's actually already a thing. Battle.net and Game Pass do integrate. That does make me think it won't be too long before Battle.net starts to have some benefits for Blizzard games. I mean, as an example, Diablo 4 is already part of Game Pass, so I think we may be speeding towards a more integrated Xbox and Blizzard. The whole thing's kind of interesting. I mean, you may not know there is actually a world where we wouldn't be using Steam, we'd be using Battle.net. Some people early on in Blizzard's history wanted to make Battle.net basically like Steam, to be a whole big store. Blizzard went against that, and I suppose now, funnily enough, Microsoft have found themselves with a non-Steam game launcher and PC that people don't hate, which does make me think that they see the Battle.net app as a resource that they can exploit. But what about the actual game? What's going on? What can I do? Well, those are good questions, and today I've got a bunch of answers. So, the next reset is a big one for obvious reasons. Patch 11.1.5 will be out. Expect from us a what to do on day one video to sort of catch you up with everything, but if you want to understand the patch, check out our video on everything that is coming in 11.1.5. Now, outside of patch changes, well, here we are with the season progress. After Tuesday for the US or Wednesday for EU, you'll be able to pick up another half spark. That'll actually bring you to 5 full sparks. That means any of your characters will be able to have 5 full pieces of crafted gear. That's with a runed crest at 658 or a gilded crest at 675, which is bloody high. So yeah, you can really just be geared to the tits. Now, we won't be getting a new catalyst charge this week, but we did hit 4 in the past week. That means you'll be able to catalyze a full set of tier gear as soon as you've got some decent gear to catalyze on your alts. Okay, the next thing then is Raid Renown. That will be moving up to 9, which really doesn't do that much, but it does at least unlock the fun-sized Florendo and Tiny Torque battle pets for purchase in the vendor outside their boss fight in the raid. More importantly though, next week is Legion Time Walking Week, and this will be mad because you can combine that with the 20% XP buff from the Winds of Mysterious Fortune and the 10% buff potions that drop, and you will have an absolutely wild time leveling up your characters. Just head out into the world, kill some regular mobs until you get a potion, then hop into Time Walking Queue and just blaze through levels. It will almost certainly be ridiculous, especially so if you're lucky enough to get grouped with a level 11 twink, because they're just totally busted powerful in time walking. Remember then that your max level characters can blast through 5 time walkings next week to get yourself a piece of raid gear in your box, which I suppose means good luck on getting the Jaster Diamond or the House of Cards. Now, if time walking or leveling isn't really your deal, then the Winds of Mysterious Fortune will also double War Within Renowns and triple Dragonflight ones, so basically set aside some time to do side quests or weeklies to get those renowns topped off. Or if you're a collector, just abuse the hell out of this to get as many Paragon boxes as your heart desires. Finally for the week then, big nerfs. Okay, nerf time. Blizzard have absolutely deleted boss damage in the raid. Now, Blizzard says this is to offset nerfs to healers, but it does kind of look aggressive. So the last 5 bosses have lost at least 10% of their most damaging raid-wide abilities across most difficulties. That's just a massive flat nerf to the incoming damage. Now, this is mostly targeted at the last 2 bosses on Mythic because they were an absolutely huge wall, but this still will help everybody. The Styx, Mugsy, and Galley nerfs in particular will take the edge off some raid healing, which I think some people will find nice. Over in the dungeons then, it's less nerfs and more fixes, which actually does mean Theater of Pain visual upgrades again. This time it's with Whirling Blade and Death Spiral showing their areas far better, so that's definitely quite nice, and that is in fact it for this week. However, that's not it for videos you can watch. Go and check out our patch content video. It covers everything that is coming in 11.1.5 and when it's coming, so if you feel out of the loop, that video will sort you out.